The rarest person who could exist. You're on a long-haul flight, and the person in the window seat strikes up a conversation. She has deep red hair and pale grey eyes, a color you've never actually seen in real life. She tells you she grew up in a village of less than 1,000 people, tucked in the mountains. Halfway through the flight, she pulls out a notebook and starts sketching, with her left hand, humming a melody she just heard once from the flight attendant's ringtone, and gets every note right. You think, this person is one of a kind. Turns out, she might actually be closer to that than you'd guess. So let's ask the question properly. Out of the 8 billion people on Earth right now, what would the rarest possible person actually look like? Let's build them, trait by trait, and see how far the odds stretch. We start with ethnicity. There are thousands of distinct ethnic groups on the planet, but population isn't spread evenly. A handful of large groups make up most of humanity, while dozens of small, isolated communities number only in the hundreds. So let's place our person in one of these small groups, around 500 people, out of a global population of 8 billion. That's 500 divided by 8 billion, or 1 in 16 million. Our person already has a 1 in 16 million chance of existing, and we've only started. Now, natural red hair. It shows up in roughly 1 to 2% of people worldwide, caused by a variation in a gene that affects pigment production. We'll use 2%, or 1 in 50. Combined with ethnicity, our person is now sitting at roughly 1 in 800 million. Next, eye color. Brown is by far the most common eye color on Earth. Gray sits at the opposite end. It's considered the rarest naturally occurring eye color, showing up in less than 1% of people, largely because it depends on a very specific, low amount of pigment in the iris scattering light in a particular way. We'll place that at 1 in 100. Multiply that in, and our person's odds drop to roughly 1 in 80 billion. Here's where it gets stranger. There's a condition called situs inversus, where a person's internal organs are arranged as a mirror image of the typical layout, heart on the right instead of the left, and so on. Most people who have it never even know, because it usually causes no symptoms at all. It occurs in about 1 in 10,000 people. Combined with everything so far, our person is now at roughly 1 in 800 trillion. Now let's give them an ear for music. Perfect pitch, also called absolute pitch, is the ability to identify or reproduce a musical note without any reference tone. Most musicians rely on relative pitch, comparing one note to another. People with perfect pitch just know. It's thought to require a specific window of early musical exposure combined with a genetic predisposition, and it appears in roughly 1 in 10,000 people, more often in those who started musical training very young. Multiply that in, and we land at roughly 1 in 8 quadrillion. Next, synesthesia, specifically the kind where letters or numbers are automatically perceived as having their own colors, even though nothing about them is actually colored. It's a real, involuntary crossing of the senses, and researchers estimate it appears in about 1 in 2,000 people. Our person's odds now stretch to roughly 1 in 16 sextillion. Finally, let's make them left-handed. Handedness is only partly genetic. Even identical twins disagree on it about 20% of the time, and it's shaped by how the brain divides up tasks like language between its two hemispheres. Globally, left-handedness sits at around 10%, or 1 in 10 people. Let's recap. Our rarest possible person comes from an ethnic group of about 500 people, has natural red hair, grey eyes, a mirrored internal anatomy, perfect pitch, letter color synesthesia, and is left-handed. Multiply every single one of those probabilities together, and the odds of this exact person existing land at roughly 1 in 160 sextillion. To put that in perspective, that's in the same neighborhood as the number of stars scientists estimate exist in the entire observable universe. If you tried to represent those odds with grains of sand, you'd need to cover every beach on Earth, many times over, just to find one grain that matches. And here's the thing, this still isn't the rarest person you could build. We didn't even touch rare blood types, unusual immune responses, extraordinary memory, or the thousands of smaller traits that make up a person. There are simply too many to fit in one video. But that's really the point. Every single one of us is walking around as the product of odds this absurd. Not because any one of us has all of these rare traits, but because the exact combination of everything that makes you you has never happened before, and will never happen again. So the next time you feel like just another face in a crowd of 8 billion, remember, statistically, there's no such thing. If your brain just got rewired a little, subscribe. This channel exists to find the ancient thing hiding inside the ordinary thing. New one drops soon.